The morning sun was just beginning to stream through the tall windows of the courthouse, painting long golden lines across the polished wooden floors. The air was thick with the smell of old books and polished wood, a scent that always seemed to remind people of the seriousness of the law. Inside the courtroom, a low hum of conversation filled the space as people settled into the wooden benches. Lawyers shuffled papers nervously, clerks tapped at keyboards, and the occasional murmur of a question or greeting drifted through the room. For most of the people present, it was just another day of routine hearings, another page in the city's long list of legal matters. Among those in the courtroom, however, one woman stood out. She was poised, calm, and radiated an unmistakable sense of authority. Her suit was perfectly tailored, a deep navy blue that contrasted sharply with her smooth, dark skin. Her hair was neatly styled, and her eyes scanned the room with a quiet intensity, taking in every detail, without revealing much of what she was thinking. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that made it clear she was not here as a bystander. People noticed her, of course, though few could place exactly why she seemed different. There was no arrogance in her presence, only a quiet, commanding dignity that drew attention naturally. The courtroom began to fill, and murmurs faded as the judge entered. Everyone rose in respect. Papers rustled, and the echo of shoes against the floor briefly broke the tension that had begun to settle. The judge, a man in his 60s with a calm voice and a steady gaze, took his seat and called the session to order. The day's cases were routine at first: traffic violations, small claims, disputes, a few minor civil matters, but the energy in the room changed dramatically when a more heated case was brought forward. It was a dispute that had already caused tension outside the courtroom. A police officer, known to some as hot-tempered but competent, had been called to testify, and there were whispers among the public and the press that the case could escalate quickly. Inside the courtroom, the officer moved with an air of impatience, his uniform crisp but his posture tight, as if he was ready to spring at any slight provocation. He muttered under his breath as he waited, tapping his fingers on the wooden table, his eyes flicking frequently to the woman who had quietly taken a seat near the front. The case began, and as the proceedings continued, the tension between the officer and the woman slowly built. It was not immediately clear to everyone why the energy in the room felt charged, but those closest to the front could see it. The officer was arguing loudly over a procedural matter, questioning a detail that seemed minor but which clearly mattered greatly to him. His voice grew sharper, more insistent, and the judge tried repeatedly to calm him down. The woman, seated calmly, said nothing at first. She simply observed, her face composed, her hands resting lightly on the armrest of her chair. Her calmness only seemed to fuel the officer's frustration, as if he expected her to react and she refused. Then, in a moment that seemed to slow time for everyone present, the officer's patience snapped. His voice rose, and he leaned slightly toward the woman as he gestured aggressively with his hand. People in the room began to shift uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. And then, suddenly, he struck her across the face. The sound was sharp in the quiet courtroom, and for a brief moment, the entire room was frozen in shock. Gasps echoed, and some people even rose from their seats, unsure if they had seen what they thought they had. The officer's face turned red, a mixture of anger and disbelief, while the woman blinked once, then twice, as if processing the unexpected strike. Despite the shock, the woman did not respond with anger or retaliation. Instead, she adjusted her glasses and her suit jacket, her expression unchanged, except for the faintest narrowing of her eyes. She seemed to weigh her options carefully, her movements deliberate and controlled. The room seemed to hold its breath as everyone tried to anticipate her next action. Some expected her to yell, some to push him away, some even feared she might collapse under the sudden humiliation. But none of that happened. Her calmness was almost more shocking than the slap itself. It was clear that she had chosen not to give in to emotion, and that decision only amplified the sense of authority she carried. The officer, on the other hand, now looked embarrassed and confused. He had acted impulsively, letting anger guide his actions, and he did not yet understand who he had just struck. The courtroom murmurs grew louder as people whispered to one another, speculating about the woman's identity. Some assumed she was a lawyer, others a witness with a particularly sharp demeanor, but no one immediately recognized her true role. And the officer certainly had no idea. His pride and his frustration had blinded him to the possibility that this was not just any woman but someone of significant influence within the police department he served. The judge called for order, banging his gavel to quiet the room. His voice, calm but firm, reminded everyone of the rules of conduct and the importance of maintaining decorum. The officer, now realizing the gravity of his actions, looked around nervously, but no one immediately approached him. The woman remained seated, her composure unbroken. As if the incident had not affected her at all, she waited, patiently, while the judge addressed the situation, allowing the law to take its course rather than responding impulsively. In the moments that followed, reporters in the room began quietly taking notes, sensing a story that went far beyond the normal court proceedings. They noted the officer's rash behavior, the stunned expressions of onlookers, and the woman's dignified response. Many knew that this incident could have serious repercussions, not just for the officer, but for the department and the wider community. Cameras were discreetly positioned, recording angles that could later be broadcast. And within the room, the tension remained high as everyone waited for the next steps. Throughout it all, the woman maintained her composure. She did not speak unnecessarily. She did not show fear or anger, and she did not allow the incident to undermine her presence. Her calmness was a statement in itself, a display of the kind of leadership that relied on patience, strategic thinking, and emotional control. For those watching, it was a powerful reminder that authority did not need to be loud or aggressive to command respect. It could be quiet, deliberate, and unshakable. Meanwhile, the officer began to realize the possible consequences of his actions. His earlier confidence had given way to uncertainty, and a subtle fear crept into his posture. He had acted in the heat of the moment, letting emotion dictate behavior, and now he faced a situation that could impact his career and reputation. The courtroom, once a place of routine legal matters, had become the stage for an unexpected confrontation, one that highlighted both the unpredictability of human behavior and the importance of restraint, respect, and awareness of the people around us. As the first part of the day drew to a close, whispers continued to circulate in the courtroom. Observers speculated on what might happen next, on how the officer would be disciplined, and on the identity of the woman who had so calmly endured the slap. There was a sense that this was only the beginning of a larger story, one that would have ripple effects far beyond the walls of the courthouse. And amid all the speculation and tension, one fact became clear. The woman had already won a subtle but undeniable victory by maintaining her dignity, demonstrating the power of calm authority in the face of provocation. Even as the gavel came down to temporarily pause the proceedings, the energy in the room had shifted. People left their seats to stretch their legs or discuss the event quietly in corners. And the officer remained at his table, staring at the floor, trying to understand the full impact of what had just occurred. The woman, still seated, collected her belongings with practiced ease, her calm presence leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed the scene. It was a moment that would be remembered, talked about, and analyzed long after the courtroom emptied. In that single, startling moment, the courthouse had witnessed more than a clash between an officer and a woman. It had witnessed the collision of impulsive aggression with measured authority, a lesson in respect, and the quiet but undeniable demonstration of leadership and strength. And though the true significance of the event had not yet been revealed to the officer, the seeds of awareness had already been planted, signaling that the course of the day, and perhaps of many days to come, would be profoundly changed. After the courtroom incident, the atmosphere was thick with tension, and whispers spread like wildfire. People who had witnessed the slap were still in shock, their minds racing to make sense of what had just happened. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others clutched their phones, reviewing the footage they had managed to capture. It was clear that something remarkable had just taken place, though few could yet understand its full significance. While the officer sat nervously at his table, trying to gather his composure, the woman remained calm, gathering her belongings with measured precision. Every movement she made reflected confidence, authority, and unshakable composure, leaving a lasting impression on everyone in the room. Outside the courtroom, the buzz began to grow louder. Reporters jostled for position in the hallways, eager to capture statements from witnesses or courtroom officials. Many were drawn not only to the shocking physical altercation but to the stark contrast between the officer's impulsive behavior and the woman's calm demeanor. People whispered about the possibility of disciplinary action, speculation running rampant about who she was and what her role might be. It was clear that the event was no ordinary courtroom dispute. Something extraordinary had unfolded before their eyes. The woman quietly walked out of the courtroom, her posture straight, her head held high. She did not raise her voice, she did not scold the officer, and she did not show anger. Her silence spoke volumes, conveying that she was in full control of the situation. Observers could not help but notice the subtle authority she carried, a kind of influence that was felt rather than loudly proclaimed. Her presence alone commanded respect. Those who had witnessed the slap began to whisper among themselves, trying to understand who she was. There was a sense that she held a position of significance, yet nobody immediately realized the truth. Meanwhile, the officer was left to grapple with his own confusion and embarrassment. He had acted in the heat of the moment, letting frustration override his judgment. The slap, which had felt satisfying to him in that instant of anger, now seemed reckless and foolish. As he replayed the scene in his mind, a sinking feeling grew in his chest. Something about her composure suggested that she was no ordinary citizen. Her calmness, her unwavering poise, and the subtle way she had carried herself hinted at a level of authority he had not recognized at all. In that moment, he realized that he had made a grave mistake, one that could have serious consequences. Outside the courtroom, news of the incident began to spread quickly. Witnesses began posting short videos and updates on social media, capturing the reactions of everyone present. The video of the slap went viral almost immediately, drawing attention from people far beyond the city. Thousands of viewers watched in shock as the officer's impulsive action and the woman's calm response played out on their screens. People commented on the stark contrast between aggression and composure, praising the woman for maintaining her dignity in a situation where anyone else might have reacted with anger or fear. Within hours, local news outlets had picked up the story, reporting on the shocking courtroom event with dramatic headlines. As the video circulated, the woman's true identity slowly began to emerge. While the officer had acted without knowledge, the public soon realized that she was not just any attendee at the courthouse. She had recently been appointed as the new police chief of the very department the officer belonged to. The irony was almost unbelievable. In a moment of impulsive anger, the officer had slapped the person who held the highest authority over him. Social media users marveled at the coincidence, and discussions about the incident exploded online. People debated the officer's behavior, shared the video widely, and expressed admiration for the chief's calm and dignified response. The chief herself remained composed amid the growing attention. She did not seek the spotlight, nor did she make any dramatic statements to the press immediately. Instead, she focused on conducting herself professionally, letting her actions speak louder than any words could. Her calmness became a powerful example of leadership, showing that true authority is measured not by aggression or loudness, but by restraint, patience, and the ability to respond wisely in difficult situations. Observers began to realize that her handling of the incident was not just about self-control, but about sending a clear message to the department and the community. Respect, professionalism, and dignity are paramount. Back at the police department, the news of the slap reached the ranks quickly. Officers who had not witnessed the courtroom incident watched the video in disbelief, struggling to reconcile what they saw with the expectations of professionalism within the force. Discussions among staff quickly centered on the implications of the event, the officer's future within the department, and the way leadership would handle the situation. Many felt a renewed sense of respect for the new chief, noting how she had demonstrated strength without resorting to confrontation, and how her actions would set a powerful example for the entire force. The officer, meanwhile, faced mounting pressure as the implications of his actions became clear. He had acted impulsively, allowing a moment of frustration to define his behavior. And now he had to confront the reality that his career could be at risk. Internal investigations were beginning, and he understood that there would be consequences. His embarrassment was compounded by the fact that the public had seen his behavior online, and he had become the subject of widespread criticism. Each passing moment seemed to emphasize the gravity of his mistake, making him painfully aware that he had underestimated the authority and presence of the woman he had struck. As the day continued, community leaders, activists, and local residents began weighing in on the incident. Many praised the new chief for her poise and for demonstrating a level of professionalism that stood in stark contrast to the officer's impulsive behavior. Public discussions focused on respect for authority, the importance of self-control, and the need for accountability within law enforcement. For some, the incident became symbolic of broader issues of power, respect, and equality. It was no longer just a courtroom event. It had become a focal point for conversations about leadership, responsibility, and the dynamics within the police force. In the midst of all this, the chief continued to carry herself with dignity, refusing to let the incident define her day or her approach to leadership. She met with her staff in private, addressing the incident calmly but firmly, emphasizing the importance of maintaining professionalism at all times. She reminded her officers that actions have consequences, and that the behavior of each individual reflects not just on themselves, but on the department as a whole. Her words carried weight, and those who heard her felt the power of her leadership, understanding that true authority comes from respect, knowledge, and integrity rather than fear or intimidation. Meanwhile, the officer began to reflect deeply on his actions. He realized that his anger had clouded his judgment, leading him to make a choice that was not only unprofessional but potentially career-ending. The magnitude of his mistake weighed heavily on him as he considered the implications. The disciplinary review, the scrutiny of the public, and the possibility that his colleagues now viewed him differently. In quiet moments, he replayed the incident in his mind, feeling a mix of regret, fear, and disbelief. He had acted without thinking, and now he had to face the consequences of his impulsive behavior. The community, too, remained engaged. Citizens discussed the incident on social media, in local cafes, and in their homes, reflecting on the lessons it offered about respect, composure, and leadership. The chief's calm response became an example to many, inspiring discussions about how individuals, whether in law enforcement or elsewhere, can handle confrontation with dignity. The event was no longer simply about a slap in a courtroom. It had become a moment that highlighted the importance of measured responses, emotional intelligence, and the quiet power of authority. By the end of the day, it was clear that the incident had left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The officer had learned a painful lesson about impulsivity. The chief had demonstrated her capacity for leadership, and the public had witnessed an unforgettable example of dignity under pressure. The courtroom that morning had been the stage for more than a confrontation. It had been a moment that would shape perceptions, influence careers, and spark meaningful discussions for weeks to come. And though the full consequences of the event had yet to unfold, one thing was certain: the chief had already earned respect in a way that few could challenge. And the story of the slap would be remembered as a turning point in both the officer's life and the community's awareness of leadership and authority. News of the courtroom incident had spread like wildfire, and by the following morning, the story was everywhere. Television channels ran short clips of the moment the officer had slapped the woman, while newspapers and online news sites carried articles highlighting the shocking encounter. The clip of the slap, combined with the woman's calm and dignified reaction, had gone viral on social media platforms. Thousands of people had shared it, and comments flooded in from every corner of the city. Some expressed outrage at the officer's behavior. Others praised the woman for remaining composed. And many were simply stunned by the irony of the situation. The officer had slapped the very person who had recently been appointed as the chief of his own police department. The incident sparked conversations that went far beyond the courtroom walls. People in offices, schools, and homes discussed the story, replaying the video and sharing their opinions. Citizens debated the behavior of the officer and the chief, the importance of respecting authority, and the wider implications for law enforcement in the community. Social media became a hub for heated discussions, with hashtags related to the incident trending locally and even nationally. The story seemed to capture everyone's attention, not just because of the slap itself, but because it revealed larger themes about respect, professionalism, and leadership. Within the police department, the reactions were immediate and intense. Officers who had not witnessed the courtroom event tuned into the viral clip, struggling to reconcile what they saw with the professionalism expected of them. The video circulated quickly among the staff, and the room buzzed with whispers and speculation. Many officers expressed embarrassment on behalf of their colleague, while others reflected on how the chief had handled the situation with remarkable grace. There was an unmistakable sense that the department had been put under the spotlight, and that the incident would have consequences for both the officer involved and the organization as a whole. The new chief, meanwhile, remained composed and focused. Despite the sudden public attention, she did not allow herself to be distracted by the media frenzy. She understood the importance of leading by example and knew that her response to the situation would shape public perception of her leadership. Instead of reacting emotionally or making dramatic statements, she addressed her staff in a private meeting. Calmly and firmly, she emphasized that professionalism, respect, and accountability were essential, both inside the department and in public interactions. She reminded the officers that the department's reputation depended on their conduct, and that every action, big or small, reflected on the organization as a whole. The officer who had committed the slap faced mounting pressure. The viral video and social media attention meant that the incident was no longer a private matter. It had become a public spectacle. He realized that his impulsive behavior had not only embarrassed himself but also potentially damaged his career and the reputation of the department. Internal investigations were announced, and the officer began to understand the serious consequences of his actions. His colleagues watched closely, many shaking their heads at the rash behavior, while others quietly hoped that he would learn from the mistake and take responsibility for his actions. Community leaders and activists quickly joined the conversation, using the incident as an opportunity to highlight the importance of accountability and respect within law enforcement. Local advocacy groups praised the chief for her composure, noting that her response reflected the qualities of a strong and effective leader. They highlighted the need for officers to manage their emotions, even in challenging situations, and emphasized that public trust in the police depended on professionalism and integrity. Public forums and social media discussions focused on broader issues of leadership, behavior, and accountability, with many using the incident as a teaching moment. The media coverage intensified as the story spread. News anchors replayed the clip repeatedly, analyzing every detail of the slap and the chief's response. Experts in law enforcement and leadership were invited to discuss the incident on television and radio programs, offering insights into the dynamics between officers and their superiors. Journalists interviewed witnesses, legal experts, and community members, all contributing to a growing narrative that highlighted both the officer's misconduct and the chief's exemplary handling of the situation. The incident, once a momentary courtroom drama, had evolved into a symbol of professionalism, leadership, and accountability. In addition to the public attention, the department faced internal challenges. Officers discussed the incident in break rooms, during training sessions, and in informal conversations. Many reflected on the lessons it offered, recognizing that moments of impulsive behavior could have far-reaching consequences. The chief took the opportunity to implement additional training on conflict resolution, communication, and professional conduct. She emphasized that respect for colleagues, the community, and the chain of command was not optional, but a fundamental responsibility of every officer. The incident became a catalyst for improving departmental culture and reinforcing the values of discipline, respect, and integrity. The officer, increasingly aware of the scrutiny he faced, began to feel the weight of his mistake. Every time he saw the video or read comments online, a sense of shame and regret grew within him. He understood that his actions had been witnessed by the entire community and that his reputation had been tarnished. He also realized that the chief's calm and composed response had amplified his own failure, showing the stark contrast between impulsive behavior and measured leadership. He knew he had to face the consequences and work to regain trust. but the path ahead seemed uncertain and challenging. Meanwhile, the chief continued to demonstrate her leadership through both words and actions. She remained approachable, speaking with officers and community members, listening to their concerns, and providing guidance. Her presence reassured the public that the department was committed to accountability and professionalism. By maintaining her calm and composed demeanor, she reinforced the importance of emotional intelligence and restraint, showing that leadership was not about aggression or intimidation but about thoughtful, deliberate action. Her approach earned her respect from both the community and the officers she supervised. As days passed, the incident continued to make headlines. Social media users created threads, analyzing the situation, debating the officer's behavior, and celebrating the chief's leadership. Local news stations provided follow-up reports, covering the internal investigations and the public reaction. The incident became more than a single moment. It evolved into a story about accountability, respect, and the power of composure in challenging situations. The chief's handling of the slap was widely discussed, with many citing it as a model of how leaders should respond to provocation and misconduct. Community members, inspired by the chief's actions, began sharing their own stories and reflections. They discussed the importance of patience, self-control, and leadership in everyday life. The incident became a teaching moment not only for law enforcement but for society at large. People spoke about the lessons of restraint, the value of dignity in the face of disrespect, and the impact of actions on public perception. The chief's example resonated widely, showing that true leadership is demonstrated through behavior and choices rather than words alone. The officer's internal review continued, with supervisors and investigators carefully assessing the situation. They evaluated the circumstances leading to the slap, the officer's behavior, and the potential disciplinary measures. The officer participated in meetings, reflecting on his actions and acknowledging his mistake. The process was challenging, but it also provided an opportunity for growth, learning, and accountability. The chief oversaw the process with fairness and integrity, ensuring that justice was served while reinforcing the values of professionalism and respect. By the end of the week, the incident had sparked meaningful discussions both inside and outside the department. Officers reflected on their own behavior. The community engaged in dialogue about leadership and accountability, and the media continued to highlight the story as an example of professionalism and restraint. The slap that had shocked the courtroom became a turning point, illustrating the consequences of impulsive actions and the power of composed leadership. For the officer, it was a moment of reckoning. For the chief, it was an opportunity to lead by example and reinforce the standards of the department. The story also inspired broader conversations about leadership and public service. People began discussing how leaders can influence behavior, set expectations, and create a culture of respect and accountability. The chief's response to the slap was cited as a model for handling conflict, demonstrating the importance of maintaining composure, making thoughtful decisions, and prioritizing professionalism over emotion. Her actions reinforced the idea that true leadership is measured not by authority alone, but by the ability to navigate difficult situations with integrity and wisdom. As the city continued to talk about the incident, the chief quietly continued her work. She attended community meetings, visited local precincts, and engaged with both officers and citizens, always maintaining her calm and thoughtful demeanor. Her leadership style, exemplified by the way she handled the courtroom incident, became increasingly respected and admired. The officer, on the other hand, faced the consequences of his actions, learning firsthand the importance of restraint, respect, and accountability. The story, once a moment of conflict, had transformed into a powerful lesson for the department, the community, and anyone who witnessed it. By the time the week came to a close, it was clear that the courtroom slap had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond that single moment. Discussions continued in homes, offices, and online forums. Lessons were being learned and shared, and the chief's reputation as a strong, composed, and effective leader was firmly established. The officer, now more aware of the weight of his actions, faced an uncertain but instructive path forward. The incident had become more than a shocking event. It had become a story of accountability, leadership, and the transformative power of calm composure in the face of adversity. The days following the courtroom incident brought a wave of serious reflection, especially within the police department. The officer who had slapped the new chief was called in for a formal review. The meeting was tense, quiet, and serious. Supervisors, internal affairs representatives, and legal advisors gathered around the table. The officer sat stiffly, feeling every eye on him. He could hear his own heartbeat in the silence, a loud reminder of the mistake he had made. The video of his impulsive action had been seen by thousands, and the weight of public scrutiny now pressed down on him. He knew there would be consequences, but he also realized that the situation was bigger than just his own embarrassment. The chief herself was calm yet firm. She did not berate him angrily, nor did she express personal anger. Instead, she allowed the review process to proceed methodically, emphasizing facts and responsibility. She understood that discipline was essential, not only for the officer involved but for the entire department. Her leadership style was evident in every word she spoke. She wanted the process to be fair, transparent, and educational. This approach reinforced her authority and demonstrated to everyone watching that she valued accountability and integrity above ego or retaliation. As the internal investigation progressed, witnesses were interviewed, and the officer was asked to explain his actions. At first, his responses were hesitant. He tried to justify his behavior, explaining his frustration with the procedural disagreement in court, but the chief's steady presence reminded him that excuses would not suffice. She listened carefully, then calmly pointed out the seriousness of striking someone, particularly someone in a position of authority. Her words were not meant to humiliate, but to make him fully understand the magnitude of his actions. The officer began to realize that this was a moment for learning, not just punishment. The chief also addressed the broader department during meetings and briefings. She emphasized that the incident was not only about the slap, but about the culture of respect, professionalism, and emotional control within the force. She reminded everyone that a single impulsive action could harm relationships, careers, and public trust. The lesson was clear. Every officer, no matter their experience or rank, had a responsibility to act with integrity. Her message resonated deeply with many officers, who began reflecting on their own behavior and attitudes, realizing that accountability was a continuous process rather than a one-time expectation. Meanwhile, the community continued to watch closely. Citizens, local leaders, and advocacy groups praised the chief's handling of the situation. Social media continued to feature discussions about the officer's actions, the chief's response, and the importance of accountability in public service. Many expressed relief that the department was taking the incident seriously and hoped it would lead to positive change. For the first time, some citizens felt that the department's leadership was actively working to maintain trust and demonstrate fairness. The incident had become a public lesson in responsibility and professional conduct, a moment that reinforced the expectations for law enforcement officers. The officer faced a series of consequences. First, he was temporarily suspended from active duty, pending further review and recommendations. The suspension was meant to serve both as punishment and as a period of reflection. He was required to attend conflict resolution and professional conduct workshops, designed to help him understand how to manage emotions, handle stress, and maintain composure under pressure. While challenging, these sessions also provided an opportunity for him to grow, offering tools and strategies to avoid repeating similar mistakes. He began to realize that learning from this experience was crucial, not only for his career but for his personal development. During the workshops, the officer encountered scenarios designed to test his decision-making and emotional control. Role-playing exercises simulated tense situations, asking participants to respond calmly and professionally. The exercises were difficult, forcing him to confront his impulsive tendencies and recognize how quickly anger could escalate situations. With each session, he became more aware of the consequences of rash behavior and the importance of maintaining composure. The chief occasionally observed these sessions, providing guidance and feedback in a way that emphasized learning rather than punishment. Her mentorship, calm yet firm, left a lasting impression on him. In addition to the internal measures, The chief also engaged with the community to reassure citizens that the department took the incident seriously. She held press briefings and participated in interviews, emphasizing accountability, professionalism, and the department's commitment to public trust. She explained that the officers' actions were not representative of the values she expected from her team, and that appropriate disciplinary measures were being taken. Her transparency and openness helped build confidence among the public, showing that leadership involved both responsibility for mistakes and dedication to improvement. The officers' colleagues began to reflect on their own behavior in light of the incident. Many realized that maintaining professionalism, even in stressful or frustrating situations, was essential. Informal conversations in break rooms often referenced the slap, not as gossip but as a learning moment. Officers discussed the importance of restraint, the impact of personal actions on the department's reputation, and how to navigate difficult interactions both internally and with the public. The chief's calm leadership style became a model for others to emulate, highlighting that authority was most effective when combined with respect, composure, and strategic thinking. At home, the officer struggled with feelings of shame and regret. He replayed the incident in his mind repeatedly, analyzing what he could have done differently. The weight of public attention, the internal disciplinary process, and the chief's composed response created a period of intense self-reflection. He began to understand that leadership was not about rank alone but about behavior, responsibility, and the ability to make thoughtful decisions even under pressure. The incident became a turning point in his life, one that challenged him to grow personally and professionally. The chief continued to manage the department with focus and clarity. She monitored the officers' progress through the workshops, evaluated departmental culture, and reinforced the values of respect, professionalism, and accountability. Her handling of the situation demonstrated a blend of firmness and fairness, showing that discipline could be effective without being harsh or vindictive. Officers and community members alike took note of her approach, appreciating the combination of authority, empathy, and strategic thinking that defined her leadership. Meanwhile, the public continued to follow the story. Local media outlets reported on the officer's suspension and participation in professional development programs. Community forums discussed the lessons learned, the importance of accountability, and the impact of leadership on organizational culture. The chief's handling of the situation became a case study in leadership, often cited in discussions about emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and professional conduct. The incident, initially shocking and negative, had transformed into a learning opportunity for the department and the wider community. Over time, the officer began to show signs of change. He approached his responsibilities with a renewed sense of caution and awareness. He applied the lessons learned during workshops and mentorship sessions, making deliberate choices to manage his emotions and maintain professionalism in challenging situations. While rebuilding trust with colleagues and the public would take time, his efforts reflected a genuine commitment to growth and accountability. The chief's guidance, firm yet supportive, had left a lasting impact on him, emphasizing that leadership and respect were earned through consistent, thoughtful behavior. The chief also took steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. She implemented ongoing training programs focused on conflict management, communication skills, and leadership development. Officers were encouraged to participate regularly, reinforcing the values of professionalism and respect throughout the department. By proactively addressing potential issues, the chief ensured that the slap incident would not only be a moment of accountability for one officer, but also a catalyst for broader cultural improvement. Her approach highlighted the importance of forward-thinking leadership and demonstrated that mistakes could be transformed into opportunities for learning and growth. As weeks passed, the officer's suspension ended, but he returned to duty with a new perspective. The experience had humbled him and reshaped his understanding of authority, respect, and responsibility. He knew that regaining trust would take time and effort, but he was determined to learn from the incident and avoid repeating past mistakes. The department, under the chief's guidance, continued to thrive, emphasizing accountability, professionalism, and integrity. The courtroom slap, once a shocking event, had become a defining moment of growth for both the officer and the department as a whole. In the end, the incident demonstrated the power of calm authority, accountability, and effective leadership. The officer faced consequences, learned valuable lessons, and began a journey of personal and professional growth. The chief reinforced her role as a strong and thoughtful leader, guiding the department with clarity, integrity, and fairness. The community witnessed a meaningful example of justice, accountability, and the transformative power of measured response in the face of conflict. What had started as a shocking moment of impulsive behavior had evolved into a story of learning, leadership, and the positive impact of thoughtful, principled action. As weeks turned into months, the incident in the courtroom became more than just a shocking moment. It became a story of transformation, growth, and lessons learned. The officer who had slapped the new chief had spent those months reflecting deeply on his actions. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities to practice patience, self-control, and professionalism. He realized that leadership and respect were not granted automatically by rank or authority. They had to be earned through consistent behavior, careful decisions, and integrity. Each time he faced a stressful situation, he remembered the courtroom incident and the chief's calm response, which had taught him more about leadership than any training manual ever could. The chief, meanwhile, continued her work with unwavering dedication. She balanced the demands of leading the department with the responsibility of maintaining public trust and guiding her officers toward growth and accountability. Her leadership style remained firm yet fair, demonstrating that strength did not have to be loud or aggressive. She continued to mentor officers, offering guidance, listening to concerns, and emphasizing the importance of integrity and respect. The way she handled the slap incident had already become a defining example of her leadership, earning her admiration both within the department and in the wider community. Public attention, which had initially been focused on shock and outrage, gradually shifted to respect and admiration. Citizens, community leaders, and media outlets highlighted the lessons learned from the incident. Social media discussions evolved from criticism of the officer's behavior to recognition of the chief's professionalism and the department's efforts to promote accountability. Many people commented on the power of calm composure in challenging situations and the importance of leading by example. The story became an inspiring example of how mistakes could be transformed into opportunities for growth and learning. Within the department, changes continued to take root. Officers began to understand that professionalism and accountability were not abstract concepts. They were daily practices that shaped the reputation and effectiveness of the entire team. Training programs implemented by the chief became regular, with exercises focusing on conflict resolution, communication skills, and leadership development. Officers participated actively, reflecting on past behaviors and learning strategies to handle difficult situations with composure. The culture of the department began to shift, gradually embracing a stronger sense of respect, integrity, and responsibility. The officer who had committed the slap took these lessons seriously. He committed himself to becoming a better professional, attending all training sessions, and applying what he learned to his daily work. Each interaction with colleagues, community members, and the public became an opportunity to demonstrate growth and rebuild trust. He acknowledged that regaining credibility would take time, but he approached each day with a renewed sense of purpose. Slowly, his colleagues began to notice the change. While some remained skeptical, many observed his sincere efforts and began to trust him once again. The chief continued to use the incident as a teaching moment, not to embarrass or punish, but to inspire growth and reflection. She spoke openly about the importance of accountability, emphasizing that everyone, regardless of position, could make mistakes. What mattered most was how individuals responded to those mistakes, whether they hid from responsibility or faced it with honesty and a commitment to improvement. Her approach created a culture in which officers felt supported but understood the seriousness of their actions. Leadership, she showed, was not about fear or dominance, but about guidance, integrity, and example. Community trust in the department began to improve. People who had initially been concerned about the incident now saw the steps taken by the chief and the department to address the situation. Public meetings were held where citizens could ask questions, express concerns, and offer suggestions. The chief participated actively, listening attentively and responding with clarity and professionalism. The visibility of her leadership and the department's transparency helped rebuild confidence, showing that accountability and growth were not just words, but actions implemented thoughtfully and consistently. As time passed, the officer gradually regained his footing. He approached his work with a renewed sense of responsibility, carefully considering his words and actions in every situation. He made conscious efforts to demonstrate respect to his colleagues and the community. While the memory of the slap incident remained, it no longer defined him entirely. Instead, it served as a constant reminder of the importance of restraint, professionalism, and learning from mistakes. Each day he became more aware of the impact of his actions on others, and more committed to behaving in a way that reflected the values of the department. The chief continued to emphasize the broader lessons from the incident, reminding the department and the community that one moment of impulsive behavior could have significant consequences. She used the experience to highlight the value of leadership, emotional intelligence, and composure. By showing patience, fairness, and a focus on learning, she transformed a negative event into a positive example for others. Officers and citizens alike recognized that the incident was not only about discipline, but also about growth, improvement, and the long-term benefits of thoughtful action. The officer's progress became evident to those around him. Colleagues began to see him take more thoughtful approaches to conflict, listen more carefully, and manage stress without resorting to anger or rash decisions. The changes were subtle at first, but over time, they became noticeable and consistent. Even the public who interacted with him began to recognize the difference, noting his improved professionalism and respect for others. The transformation was not instantaneous, but it was real, and it reflected the lessons learned from the courtroom incident and the chief's example. Meanwhile, the chief's reputation continued to grow. She was admired not only for her ability to lead the department effectively, but also for handling a potentially explosive situation with calm, dignity, and fairness. Her handling of the slap incident became an example cited in leadership training programs, professional development workshops, and public discussions about accountability and integrity. She had turned a moment of conflict into a teaching opportunity, demonstrating that the measure of a leader is not how they react in comfort, but how they respond when challenged or confronted with disrespect. The courtroom incident also left a lasting impression on the community. People spoke about the importance of professionalism, respect, and accountability in all areas of life. The story became an example of how impulsive actions can have serious consequences, and how calm, thoughtful responses can inspire admiration and trust. For young officers, community members, and anyone interested in leadership, the chief's composure served as a model to emulate. Her actions proved that true strength lies not in aggression or intimidation, but in integrity, patience, and the ability to guide others positively. Months later, as the officer resumed his duties fully, he carried the lessons from the incident with him every day. He understood that leadership is demonstrated through actions, that respect must be earned, and that accountability is a lifelong responsibility. His experience became a personal turning point, shaping the way he approached his work, colleagues, and the community. He remained aware of the chief's example, striving to reflect her values in his own behavior, and contributing to a more professional and respectful culture within the department. The chief, for her part, continued to balance leadership and mentorship, guiding the department with clarity and fairness. She ensured that the lessons from the courtroom incident were not forgotten, integrating them into training programs and ongoing discussions about professionalism and accountability. Her approach reinforced the idea that growth and improvement are continuous, and that even difficult or shocking events can be transformed into opportunities for learning. By handling the situation with calm authority, she had strengthened the department, inspired the public, and set a lasting example of effective leadership. In the end, the courtroom incident became more than a story of conflict or embarrassment. It became a story of transformation, learning, and the power of composed leadership. The officer learned to manage his emotions, rebuild trust, and act responsibly. The chief demonstrated that authority is most effective when paired with patience, fairness, and integrity. The department grew stronger, the community regained confidence, and the incident became a lasting example of how challenges can become opportunities for growth. The lessons learned extended far beyond the walls of the courthouse, offering insights into leadership, accountability, and the human capacity for reflection and change. The story concluded not with anger or scandal, but with understanding, growth, and a renewed sense of purpose. The slap in the courtroom, once a shocking moment, had ultimately become a catalyst for improvement for the officer, the chief, the department, and the community. It was a reminder that even in moments of conflict, integrity, composure, and thoughtful action can transform a negative event into a powerful lesson. The chief's calm authority and the officer's eventual growth demonstrated that respect, accountability, and leadership are not abstract ideals. They are the outcomes of reflection, responsibility, and consistent effort over time. And so, life continued in the department and the community. The courtroom incident faded from daily conversation but remained a story of inspiration and caution. Officers carried the lessons learned into their daily work. The chief continued to lead with dignity and purpose. And the officer, forever changed, committed himself to professionalism, integrity, and respect. What began as a moment of impulsive behavior had ended as a story of redemption, learning, and the enduring power of leadership. The courtroom slap was no longer simply a shocking event, it was a symbol of transformation, growth, and the positive change that comes from reflection, accountability, and wise leadership.